I just want to touch on this quickly. It is the 50th anniversary of the war on poverty. And we're going to hear the same rhetoric that we heard from Ronald Reagan coming out of Ted Cruz and whatnot. There are two papers that are out as of January of this year. One is from the NBER. It's a working paper, so it's yet to be peer-reviewed yet. But it is from Liana Fox, from the Swedish Institute for Social Research, Erwin Garfinkel, Columbia University, Niraj Kashul from Columbia University, Jane Waldfogel from Columbia University, and Christopher Weimer from Columbia University. And they studied the implications of the war on poverty, which, of course, was first declared by Lyndon Johnson. It was the introduction of various programs to improve education, health, skills, jobs, access to economic resources for poor people. And there are two different ways, apparently, to measure poverty. One is the supplemental poverty measure, and one is the official poverty measure. Understand that the official poverty measure does not count. It omits cash transfers, things like Medicaid, things like food stamps. It omits essentially much of what the government does. If you look at the supplemental poverty measure, as this paper does, and as the executive summary from the Council of Economic Advisors, progress report on poverty, this NBER study shows that government programs have played a particularly important role in alleviating child poverty and deep poverty, especially during economic downturns. If you look over the period from 1967 to 2012, what poverty rates would be today in the absence of government anti-poverty programs, you would find that government programs today are cutting poverty nearly in half, from 31% to 16%. In 1967, when they were first initiated, they cut poverty by a quarter, from 25% to 19%. They also found that government programs play a substantial and growing role in alleviating child poverty, particularly deep child poverty. Government programs in 2012 reduced child poverty by 12 percentage points and deep child poverty by 11 percentage points versus 3 and 5 percentage points, respectively, in 1967. So there are other forces that are driving poverty, more so than 1967. And that would most likely be both the failure of the minimum wage to maintain its rate of inflation and stagnating wages for the poor and middle class. Third, the impact of government anti-poverty programs is particularly pronounced during economic downturns. We have what are known as automatic stabilizers: unemployment insurance, food stamps, Medicaid on some level, which kicks in when you drop below a certain amount of income. These automatically expand to fill the gap. So when they talk about President Obama is the food stamp president because we have reckon 47 million Americans on food stamps, It's not because the program was expanded. It is because the number of poor people in need of food stamps grew in the wake of the Great Recession. Without government programs, So, using a measure that takes into account the full array of government anti-programs, we are able to quantify the impact that different types of programs play. Our estimates point to a particularly crucial role for tax credits, the Earned Income Tax Credit, and food and nutrition programs, especially in the modern era. So, there is no winning the war on poverty, but there is mitigating how many people are living in poverty. And frankly, the so-called welfare reform of the 90s has exacerbated the problem that we face today. It was a program that was designed for good times, but left no recourse in bad times.
And even in good times, it was just designed to push people into fast food jobs, essentially.
Yes.
Which, when you combine with what you mentioned about wage increases and wage stagnation, even in, quote, good times, is still basically wage poverty.
Also know that Social Security was greatly expanded during the 60s. And it reduces the official elderly poverty rate from 44% without counting Social Security benefits to 9% with them. It's keeping a huge percentage of our elderly out of poverty. So we have a lot of work to do, obviously. But the idea that somehow government is making poverty worse is simply a joke, a sick joke.